Welcome to Jersey Reads the Classics, an audiobook podcast delving into the finest works of our literary masters. Unfortunately, it's read by this woman.
What the hell? Who cares? Let's go on an adventure.
Hello and welcome back to Jersey Reads the Classics with me, your host, Rosie DeCandia. Well, my friends, thank you so much for joining me again. It's so nice to have you back where you belong. Yeah, listening to a beautiful holiday tale. It does not make a difference if you are Christian, if you're religious, if you're not religious, if you're not spiritual, does not make a difference. This is just to spread some holiday cheer and goodwill to men, knowing that we all are one, and this is what I'm doing. And that's the purpose of reading this story. Okay, so without any further ado, let me do a quick recap. So Ebenezer Scrooge, he went back to his past and he was a miserable little boy all by himself. And then his sister Franny came and she's like, "You're coming home with us because Dad's really nice now and he wants you home." Yay. And then we fast forward to a night of Christmas Eve where he's working as an apprentice for Mr. Fezziwig and they're all getting ready for a big old party. And Ebenezer's a nice guy and all this other stuff. And the party has started and there's a big old dance. So now let's proceed to that. And let's start up with A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. Mr. Fezziwig's ball. But if there had been twice as many, 4 times, old Fezziwig would have been a match for them, and so would Mrs. Fezziwig. As to her, she was worthy to be his partner in every sense of the term. If that's not high praise, tell me higher, and I'll use it. Okay, so they're a couple that matched each other in personality and all that good stuff, and character. A positive light appeared to issue from Fezziwig's calves. They shone in every part of the dance like moons. You couldn't have predicted at any given time what would have become of them next. And when old Fezziwig and Mrs. Fezziwig had gone all through the dance, advance and retire, both hands to your partner, bow and curtsy, corkscrew, thread the needle, and back again to your place, Fezziwig cut so deftly that he appeared to wink with his legs and came upon his feet again without a stagger. Okay, so the Fezziwigs are dancing fools. Like, they can dance. They should be on that Dancing with the Stars. So Mr. and Mrs. Fezziwig throw a good freaking party and know how to cut a rug. Okay, I don't know what corkscrew and all that stuff is, but you know what? These are old-timey days, so I can't tell you what that shit means. But we're just going to move on. When the clock struck 11, this domestic ball broke up. Mr. and Mrs. Fezziwig took their stations, one on either side of the door, and shaking hands with every person individually as he or she went out, wished him or her a Merry Christmas. When everybody had retired but the 2 apprentices, that was Dick and Ebenezer, but Ebenezer is a dick, they did the same to them, and thus the cheerful voices died away, and the lads were left to their beds, which were under a counter in the back shop. During the whole of this time, Scrooge had acted like a man out of his wits. His heart and soul were in the scene, and with his former self, he corroborated everything, remembered everything, enjoyed everything, and underwent the strangest agitation. It was not until now, when the bright faces of his former self and Dick were turned from them, that he remembered the ghost and became conscious that it was looking full upon him, while the light upon its head burnt very clear. So now, the ghost is noticing that Ebenezer is loving all this, and now Ebenezer's not the old, pussy face or prune face guy. He's actually enjoyed all this, and now the ghost was looking at him and seeing that Ebenezer has a soft spot for all this. "A small matter," said the ghost, "to make these silly folks so full of gratitude." "Small," echoed Scrooge. The spirit signed to him to listen to the 2 apprentices, who were pouring out their hearts in praise of Fezziwig, and when he had done so, said, "Why, is it not? He has spent but a few pounds of your mortal money, 3 or 4 perhaps. Is that so much that he deserves this praise?" "It isn't that," said Scrooge, heated by the remark, and speaking unconsciously like his former, not his latter self. "It isn't that, spirit. He has the power to render us happy or unhappy, to make our service light or burdensome, a pleasure or a toil. Say that his power lies in words and looks, in things so slight and insignificant that it is impossible to add and count them. What then? The happiness he gives is quite as great as if it's cost a fortune." He felt the spirit's glance and stopped. "You see, Ebenezer, is saying that this man has all this power and like he should be spoken with praise. Ebenezer is waking up. What is the matter? Asked the ghost. Nothing particular, said Scrooge. Something, I think, the ghost insisted. No, said Scrooge. No, I should like to be able to say a word or two to my clerk just now. That's all. His former self turned down the lamps as he gave utterance to the wish, and Scrooge and the ghost again stood side by side in the open air. See, he wanted to talk to his clerk because now he sees how you treat people. I love it. He's already getting the message. You see, going back in time, imagine if we could view all portions of our lives to see what we did and how we can change them, or how we were and how much we've changed. My time grows short, observed the spirit. Quick! This was not addressed to Scrooge, or to anyone whom he could see, but it produced an immediate effect, for again Scrooge saw himself. He was older now, a man in the prime of life. His face had not the harsh and rigid lines of later years, but it had begun to wear the signs of care and avarice. There was an eager, greedy, restless motion in the eye which showed the passion that had taken root and where the shadow of the growing tree would fall. He was not alone, but sat by the side of a fair young girl in a mourning dress, in whose eyes there were tears, which sparkled in the light that shone out of the ghost of Christmas past. It matters little, she said softly, to you, very little. Another idol has displaced me, and if it can cheer and comfort you in time to come, as I would have tried to, I have no just cause to grieve. What idol has displaced you? He rejoined. A golden one. This is the even-handed dealing of the world, he said. There is nothing on which it is so hard as poverty, and there is nothing it professes to condemn with such severity as the pursuit of wealth. You fear the world too much, she answered gently. All your other hopes have merged into the hope of being passion. Gain engrosses you. Have I not? What then? He retorted. Even if I have grown so much wiser, what then? I am not changed towards you. She shook her head. Am I? Oh, bitch, she breaking up with him. Because guess what? He's loving money more than the pretty fair maiden. Our contract is an old one. It was made when we were both poor and content to be so, until in good season we could improve our worldly fortune by our patient industry. You are changed. When it was made, you were another man. I was a boy, he said impatiently. Your own feeling tells you that you were not what you are, she returned. I am. That which promised happiness when we were in one heart is fraught with misery now that we are two. How often and how keenly I have thought of this, I will not say. It is not enough that I have thought of it and can release you. Have I ever sought release? In words? No, never. In what then? In a changed nature, in an altered spirit, in another atmosphere of life, another hope as its great end, in everything that made my love of any worth of value in your sight. If this had never been between us, said the girl, looking mildly but with steadiness upon him, tell me, would you seek me out and try to win me now? Ah, no. So what she's saying is, now that you got money, bitch, you wouldn't be interested in me because I was poor like you, but now I'm still poor and I'm not going to help you position in life. So you wouldn't seek me out. So she's being a good enough person to break the contract. Wow, that's a good person. She's a nice young lady. He seemed to yield to the justice of this supposition, in spite of himself. But he said with a struggle, You think not? I would gladly think otherwise if I could, she answered. Heaven knows, when I have learned a truth like this, I know how strong and irresistible it must be. But if you were free today, tomorrow, yesterday, can even I believe that you would choose a dowerless girl? Remember, girls had to bring friggin' money with them and like have a dowry and shit. You, who in your very confidence with her, weighing everything by gain, or choosing her, if for a moment you were false enough to your one guiding principle to do so. Do I not know that your repentance and regret would surely follow? I do, and I release you with a full heart for the love of him you once were. Oh, that's beautiful. So she's letting him out of the deal because she's saying, you'll regret this. Like, if you marry me, because I'm not bringing anything to the plate. You're going to regret it, and I know that. And you know what? I'm going to let you go with light and love for who you used to be, even though right now you're a big old dick and now you're becoming a freaking, you're becoming a miser and you're becoming like greedy. It's like when you love somebody so much, you let them go to set them free, right? And you also have to love yourself enough to be like, I let you go to, let you go because I also need to be free. Because she knew their marriage wasn't going to be a happy one. He was too greedy and she was happy being, she was in love with him. I think he was still in love with her, but unfortunately, the poverty thing, you know what? He's scarred from childhood and he wants to make it. So he's just going to make it. He's going to fake it until he makes it. And also he's going to lose a lot, which he already has now. So he's lost the love of his life. Okay, so let's proceed to the next part. I just keep going off and off and off. There's a lot of woo-woo with this. Okay, he was about to speak, but with the head turned from him, she resumed. You may, the memory of what is past half makes me hope you will have pain in this. A very, very brief time, and you will dismiss the recollection of it gladly as an unprofitable dream from which it happened well that you awoke. May you be happy in the life you have chosen. She left him and they parted. I love that. She's like, yeah, you're going to be like, that just happened. And, she did me a favor because it wasn't worth my time. Oh, Spirit, said Scrooge, show me no more. Conduct me home. Why do you delight to torture me? One shadow more, exclaimed the ghost. No more, cried Scrooge. No more. I don't wish to see it. Show me no more. But the relentless ghost pinioned him in both his arms and forced him to observe what happened next. They were in another scene and place, a room, not very large or handsome, but full of comfort. Near to the winter fire sat a beautiful young girl, so like the last that Scrooge believed it was the same until he saw her, now a comely matron sitting opposite her daughter. The noise in this room was perfectly tumultuous, for there were more children there than Scrooge in his agitated state of mind could count. And unlike the celebrated herd in the poem, they were not 40 children conducting themselves like one, but every child was conducting itself like 40. So basically these kids were brats, these little crumb scratch snatchers. There was probably 2, 3, 4 of them, and they were acting like there were 40 kids. And there was this hot young thing that looked just like the woman that was sitting along the shelf. Okay, so here we go. The consequences were uproarious beyond belief, but no one seemed to care. On the contrary, the mother and the daughter laughed heartily and enjoyed it very much. And the latter, soon beginning to mingle in the sports, got pillaged by the young brigands most ruthlessly. What would I not have given to be one of them? Though I never could have been so rude. No, I wouldn't for the wealth of all the world have crushed that braided hair and torn it down, and for the precious little shoe, I wouldn't have plucked it off. God bless my soul to save my life. As to measuring her waist in sport, as they did bold young brood, I couldn't have done it. I should have expected my arm to have grown rounded for a punishment and never come straight again. And yet, I should have dearly liked, I own, to have touched her lips, to have questioned her, that she might have opened them, to have looked upon the lashes of her downcast eyes and never raised a blush, to have let loose waves of hair, an inch of which would be a keepsake beyond price. In short, I should have liked, I do confess, to have had the lightest license of a child, and yet to have been man enough to know its value. That's beautiful. Oh my God, to go back in childhood and then see all this and have the moment with this young girl and just feel the love or what have you, but then still know that it's a special moment. But now a knocking at the door was heard, and such a rush immediately ensued that she with laughing face and plundered dress was borne towards it, the center of a flushed and boisterous group, just in time to greet the father, who came home attended by a man laden with Christmas toys and presents. Then the shouting and the struggling and the onslaught that was made on the defenseless porter, the scaling him with chairs for ladders to dive into his pockets, to spoil him of brown paper parcels, hold on tight by his cravat, hug him round his neck, pommel his back, and kick his legs in irrepressible affection. Oh, even though they're brats, they love their pappy. Anyway, the shouts of wonder and delight with which the development of every package was received, the terrible announcement that the baby had been taken in the act of putting a doll's frying pan into its mouth and was more than suspected of having swallowed a fictitious turkey glued on a wooden platter. Oh God, babies put shit up their nose, always swallowing things, but they always seem to poop that shit out. The immense relief of finding this a false alarm, the joy and gratitude and ecstasy, they are all indescribable alike. It is enough that by degrees the children and their emotions got out of the parlor, and by one stair at a time, up to the top of the house, where they went to bed, and so subsided. Oh, thank God. I couldn't handle all those kids either, I'll tell you the truth. And now Scrooge looked on more attentively than ever when the master of the house, quick to catch your eye, that's from Les Mis, having his daughter leaning fondly on him, sat down with her and her mother at his own fireside. And when he thought that such another creature, quite as graceful and as full of promise, might have called him father and been a springtime in the haggard winter of his life, his sight grew very dim indeed. "Belle," said the husband, turning to his wife with a smile, "I saw an old friend of yours this afternoon. Who was it?" "Guess." "How can I?" Don't I know?" she added in the same breath, laughing as he laughed. "Mr. Scrooge." Mr. Scrooge it was. I passed his office window, and as it was not shut up and he had a candle inside, I could scarcely help seeing him. His partner lies upon the point of death, I hear, and there he sat alone, quite alone in the world, I do believe. "Spirit," said Scrooge in a broken voice, "remove me from this place." "I told you these were shadows of the things that have been," said the ghost, "that they are what they are. Do not blame me." "Remove me," Scrooge exclaimed. "I cannot bear it." He turned upon the ghost, and seeing that it looked upon him with a face in which in some strange way there were fragments of all the faces it had shown him, wrestled with it. "Leave me, take me back, haunt me no longer." In the struggle, if that can be called a struggle, in which the ghost, with no visible resistance on its own part, was undisturbed by any effort of its adversary, Scrooge observed that its light was burning high and bright, and dimly connecting with that its influence over him. He seized the extinguisher cap, and by a sudden action pressed it down upon his head. The spirit dropped beneath it, so that the extinguisher covered its whole form, but though Scrooge pressed it down with all his force, he could not hide the light which streamed from under it in an unbroken flood upon the ground. He was conscious of being exhausted and overcome by an irresistible drowsiness, and further, of being in his own bedroom. He gave the cap a parting squeeze, in which his hands relaxed, and had barely time to reel to bed before he sank into a heavy sleep. Scrooge extinguishes the first of the three spirits. Damn, Scrooge. That was pretty ballsy. That was a dick move, yeah. Literally grabbing the cap and trying to extinguish the thing because he didn't want to see the truth about his past. You know, don't we all have those kind of memories that we don't want to see if we hurt somebody or we've done something? And sometimes it's not intentional, but yet we don't want to revisit those memories. And that's the thing. Life ain't always so pretty for all of us, but sometimes we just have to face the facts, you know. I like that he shows what happened with Belle, right? The whole thing is this. Scrooge could have had a nice life, but Scrooge decided to be distracted by the worldly thing of money. So he could have had love. He could have had love and had probably a beautiful life with Belle and children and been fulfilled. But he made money his new lover. And she was like, I can't, you know what? I love the fact that she stood in her truth. And even though she loved him, she's like, I've been replaced, and at this point I release you. And I think that's important in life, to acknowledge when it's time to let something go. And I think from this, especially, it's important for all of us, whether it's relationship, a job, a situation. Sometimes you just got to look at something and look at the black and white of it and be like, you know what? This isn't serving me. This isn't serving that other person or the other situation, what have you. And it's time to like end it. So I want to encourage you to think about if there's anything in your life. We've talked about this before, that it's time to like release or end and be okay with it and process it and go through the motion and, say to yourself, I think it's time. If you are ready to let go, if it's no longer serving you, I said once again, I think we said a couple episodes ago, Marie Kondo, if it doesn't bring you joy, it's got to go, right? You know what I mean? So the same thing with things in our lives, even for the other person. I think when you love somebody, you care about something, or a situation's not working for both of you, somebody's finally got to make the decision to be like, this ain't working. It's time to end that shit. So I encourage you to think about that, or if it's happened to you, to look back and be like, oh yeah, that was a good decision. Because I think it's also, this book is about really thinking about your life. This is an opportunity. Like Scrooge didn't want to see the bad parts. He chose to make money his end all be all. And the result of that, the consequence of that, my friends, was he lost a great girl. He lost a great wife. He lost a great life. So, I know that sometimes there's the force of destiny, and the Italians say la forza del destino, and what's going to be yours is going to come to you, but we still have the power of choice. So each and every day we have the power to make the decision if we're going to be nice, if we're going to be mean, if we're going to be a jerk, if we're going to be kind, or if we're going to decide to follow our dreams or not. Now, I know sometimes we're put in places and predicaments where we don't have a choice, and we just are like, this is the only option at this moment. And hey, we all got to do what we got to do. But sometimes we come to a crossroads, and sometimes the universe likes to push us because we're not making the choice. So the universe makes the choice for us. So if there's anything right now that's going on in your life, and we know what's going on in all our lives, right? It's COVID, it's a pandemic. This may be the universe pushing you to make a choice and a decision by ending a relationship that's not working. I mean, a lot of people are getting divorced during this time, breaking up because they're realizing they're spending all this time with their partner and it's, not good. Or the job that you did have, and maybe right now you're laid off. Maybe this isn't the job you ever really liked and was passionate about. So now you can start working on your hobbies, the things you'd rather be doing, or looking for something else to do and fine-tuning those skills, right? So the thing is this, everything we decide to do, there are consequences, whether they're good or bad. And I don't know if it's good or bad. It's just that there are consequences. We make a decision and that's it. It's cause, reaction. That's it. You know what I mean? Action, reaction. I mean, this reaction, it's action, reaction. That's just life. So at the end of the day, I'm going to encourage you to, think about things that maybe in the past you made the decision based on your heart. We've talked about this, or based on your ego and how it's worked out for you. Now, if you want to live in ego, that's fine. But if you're watching this 9 times out of 10, you're not living in ego. You're worrying about, or you're thinking about, what's going to give me fulfillment. And I know sometimes we still have to pay the bills. So no one's saying that you have to just completely put yourself in a destitute position that you can't afford to live because you're following your heart. You still have to realistically, I understand that, pay bills. You got to have food, things like that. But I'm just going to encourage you to find the balance. And especially now that the world is pretty much shut down, this is a great time for you to be introspective and to look at the things that you find are to be your priorities. And you know what? During this time, which has been months now, we've been sitting around since March with this, right? And it's now, oh God, are we still in November? November, December. Think about it. We've had a lot of time. And maybe your priorities have changed. So I'm just going to encourage you to think about what's in alignment with you and what's not in alignment with you. And if there are things that you need to release, or people or places or things or situations you need to release, then release them with light and love, just like Belle did. She released him, not calling him, you're a dick, you're a freaking cheap miser, I can't believe you, you don't love me anymore, I've given you all this time and all this stuff, and now all of a sudden I'm not good enough for you. No, she said, I remember who you were. And I see it, she still saw him with those eyes of love and said, it's time for you to go. And then, you know what? She had a great life. She married a great husband. She had great kids, even though they were bratty. But she moved on. And poor Scrooge, his life ain't so good. And he's an old man. This man is not a youngin'. He ain't going to be marrying the Belle. But doesn't mean he can't change his life after this, his awakening. And then maybe meet somebody. Oh, you never know. He could meet someone 30 years younger. But that's not the point. Point is, so I'm just going to ask you right now and encourage you to think about what's in alignment with you right now and what's not. And whatever is not, if it's time to let it go with light and love, with no judgment for yourself and no judgment for the other person or situation. And know that right here, right now, you are worthy to make decisions that's in the betterment of for you as well as for the other person. All right, my friends. So I hope you enjoyed this chapter. I don't even know if they're chapters. I mean, the thing is, like I said, I'm just going through the motion with this book, but I am enjoying it. I do find it very poetic. It's beautifully written. I can see why it's a classic, but it really gets and tugs on your heartstrings, and it's really making its point. It's hitting it home. So anyway, my friends, I'm wishing you well. I'm hoping you're staying healthy and blessed and sane, and I'm sending you tons of light and love and joy and peace, serenity, calm, magic, 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 fairy dust, abundance, prosperity, all the good stuff that you are worthy of and should, receive, and receive it with light and love. So just knowing you are worthy, you are enough, you are loved, someone is thinking about you, and until we read again. And there we go. We have sirens blaring. So you know what that means? It's time to pull me away. Let's take the cane and I'm out. Ta-da. Bye. Ciao. Au revoir. Oh, it's noisy. I live in a city, kids. It's a noisy city.